how their standards come back to really to bite them. We'll talk about whether photos from your college past should dictate what you do now in your future. And, of course, talking about the governor of Virginia. Anyway, so we'll be talking about that as well as going to look over some Arkansas legislation. We also have a guest coming up on the program. I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Gregory Wrightstone, an author of a book entitled Inconvenient Facts, the Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know About. Kind of on the heels of the president poking fun at the global warming alarmists last week when the country was facing negative 50-degree temperatures. Anyway, we got all of that coming up and much, much more. So you certainly want to stay tuned. And, the show starts in 15 seconds.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Happy Monday to everybody out there. This is hour number one. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine here. We are sure to have an exciting week this week in the coverage of the 92nd General Assembly, what's going on in Little Rock at the Marble Palace. The governor expected to run, or his tax cut proposal, is expected to run at some point this week, maybe as early as tomorrow, but we will see what happens with that. He did have the press conference last Wednesday, which was really and truly, I was shocked that the proposal was just a standalone tax cut bill. Now, there's probably other pieces of legislation coming down the pike after that, but in terms of just what the bill is, a straight income tax reduction is a good thing, I think. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the program via call or text, you can also sound off on the Facebook page or the YouTube page. It's Conduit News, facebook.com/Conduit News or Conduit News on YouTube. All right, but let's get right into it. If you were living under a rock, the New England Patriots are Super Bowl champs. They're now saying, the sports people that do this for a living, they're now saying that Tom Brady has now solidified himself as the greatest quarterback of all time. They're certainly saying that. I mean, he's been to the Super Bowl 9 times, and now this was his 6th championship. Remember when Michael Jordan was like 6? He was flashing that up there. That's kind of what I thought about when he won. Of course, then you got the other people saying the Patriots are now, the New England Patriots, they're now the most dominant team in sports in the NFL history as far as a dynasty goes. That they're now the most dominant dynasty era. So we'll see. A lot of people are wondering, does that mean Tom Brady's going to retire? Who knows? That's the kind of guy who's so driven. I don't know if he'll ever retire, but he says that it does. He basically said he wasn't going to retire before this thing was either. Whether he won or lost. So I did watch the game. I'll tell you, I watched the game. What is it? It's final score 13-3, and it was just a defensive game. A lot of people, Joe, you were saying your friends were kind of disappointed, bummed. They thought it was going to be more of an offensive game. I had no expectations at all. Like I don't follow the NFL. I don't follow these teams, and so I kind of enjoyed it. Like I actually enjoyed the defensive game, and as I was paying attention, I did watch the Super Bowl halftime show. The reason is I am just morbidly curious. I'm sorry. It's like I'm a masochist when it comes to these Super Bowl halftime shows because I just want to see how debauched they get. That's my personal. That's what I think. The Super Bowl halftime shows are just getting worse and worse and worse. Did anybody see in the Super Bowl halftime show? I guess in the middle of the Maroon 5 guys, after he sung a few songs, a few of his hits. All of a sudden, you had this visual of these flaming meteors on fire descending from space onto the Earth. And then you actually had this flaming ball come on stage, and then all of a sudden there's this rapper rapping in hell. Did anybody see this? No, it didn't say. They weren't saying here's a rapper who's rapping in hell, but if you actually look at this guy, he's sitting there rapping, and there's fire all around him, and he's standing on these what appear to be jagged rocks, and it looks like this guy is in hell. Like if you were to picture, your stereotypical what hell would look like, here's this guy. I just thought to myself, I don't know how any parent would want their child to be subjected to this. I mean, it's just, and this is entertainment. Are you not entertained? I don't know. Like I said, I have a morbid curiosity about these Super Bowl halftime shows because to me they just get worse and worse and worse every single year almost. But that's just me. Maybe I pay attention to detail more than most people. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. National anthem seemed to go good though. National anthem was good. Seemed to be patriotic. Super Bowl commercials, are they even funny anymore? I mean, are people even trying? Was there anything that you thought was funny Super Bowl commercial wise out there? I'm trying to think if there was one. I think there was one that made me laugh. Maybe it was the Walmart one. There was a Walmart. Walmart's trying to get you now to use their pickup service, and so. The Walmart one wasn't bad because they put the DeLorean, the flying time machine DeLorean from Back to the Future, one of my favorite movie, and that was kind of cool to see all these famous different cars. They had the Knight Rider car, they had the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo, all these different cars from different genres, if you will. I don't know. I thought that was entertaining, maybe, but I mean, aside from that, not really. I don't know. I don't get it. I saw the Washington Post ad. The Washington Post comes out with this ad about how journalists are, if it's not for journalists who are out there gathering information, giving you the facts, you wouldn't know what was going on. And I'm thinking to myself, in the last 2 weeks, the mainstream media has had it so wrong. When you talk about the Covington Catholic boys, right, and what you're trying to do there, and then they come out and they try to say that Donald Trump's BuzzFeed, they ran with that BuzzFeed story that said Donald Trump told his attorney to lie, and that was fake news. And then the Covington Catholic boys, that was fake news. They just over and over and over again. And of course, the last person that they show, this ad was narrated by Tom Hanks, and the last journalist they show is Khashoggi, the guy that got cut up in the Middle East. And I'm just thinking to myself, my goodness. I mean, that in and of itself is suggestive fake news because Khashoggi, while he, was being published by the Washington Post, and by the way, the Washington Post never has to answer for why all of a sudden they started publishing Khashoggi's articles in Arabic, saying something really bad happened to him after they started reading his articles in Arabic. And again, Khashoggi being in with the Saudi Arabian royal family, and then essentially just not liking who Ben Salman is and starting to plot against him and being very, very radical, very much in with the Muslim Brotherhood, and be like somebody working for the Gambino crime family and being taken care of all their life and benefited from the family all their lives, and all of a sudden try to leave the family and then start writing articles in the Washington Post about how bad the family is. What do you think's going to happen to that person? Oh, no, but he was a journalist. He was a journalist, and Donald Trump is not only a KGB agent and a Nazi, but he is also secretly a Saudi Arabian loyalist to the crown. It's insane. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. All right, so that's the Super Bowl. That's all I got to say about the Super Bowl and the commercials and everything else. Next up, we have the governor of Virginia, Governor Northam. So Governor Northam here, he makes these offensive comments that we covered on the program. Now, we covered them in the context of what President Donald Trump said. Remember, we on this program on Thursday, we went back at the very end of the show and we listened to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump debate over abortion. And Donald Trump saying that she's okay with partial birth abortion and she wants to be able to rip the baby from the womb at 9 months, and that's not okay with me. Remember all that? And then we had Kathy Tran, we had Governor Northam, and they're coming out basically validating everything the president was saying back during the debate with Hillary Clinton. Well, I'm not the only one that thought that video was very, very insightful, because everyone else did too. Fox News wrote a story about it. Fox News headline, Trump's late-term abortion warning in 2016 debate against Clinton goes viral. That's the headline here. And this was written clearly 3 days ago. This was written after we did our portion of this, or we covered this. A prescient exchange is how Fox News describes it. A prescient exchange from a 2016 debate between now President and Hillary Clinton has gone viral and gained new traction amid the newly stoked abortion debate over state bills aimed at loosening restrictions on third trimester terminations. A video from the final presidential debate in October 2016 in Las Vegas, Nevada, circulated on social media Friday, showing then-candidate Trump blasting former Secretary of State Clinton on her stance on abortion, describing in graphic terms what he alleged to be her position on the issue. With what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby, Trump said. Now you can say that's okay, and Hillary can say that's okay, but that's not okay with me, he continued, because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where she's been, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month on the final day, and that's not acceptable. Clinton then accused Trump of using scare tactics in response, saying, well, that's just not what happens. All right, so that goes viral, and we played it for you on Thursday, and everybody seems to be condemning or realizing that the Democrat Party, and we got a call from this on Friday. Somebody was saying, you need to be careful not to cast a broad brush against all Democrats when you say that, they're the party of, late-term abortion. Because, and I'll certainly quantify, to me, I would imagine most Democrats, if you are pro-choice or let me just say, if you're pro-abortion, most Democrats who are pro-abortion think you should make up your mind, in the first trimester. At least, that's what they want you to think. But yeah, I'm sure there are many of them that do. To me, it doesn't matter, because I believe life begins at conception. But if there's all of a sudden all these Democrats now, I think, that are wanting clarification, or they're wanting to be, well, not all Democrats. Well, maybe you should think about that before. I'm sorry. I'm just going with birds of a feather. We're talking about a Democrat Party that tried to vote God out of their platform. Okay? This was back when Obama was in office. We're talking about a Democrat Party that constantly, your leaders, instead of talking about freedom of religion, they change the phrase freedom of religion, instead use the term freedom of worship. And that's a very subtle change, but it has massive consequences when we're talking about exercising or living your faith in public life or when you operate a business or whatever. And now we're talking essentially the same Democrat Party that was pro-slavery, that if they had their way, slavery would still exist. By the way, the same Democrat Party that refuses to acknowledge the human trafficking modern-day slavery crisis we have right now at our southern border. Oh, and the same Democrat Party that is pro-choice even after you're outside of the womb. Some of you think that the mother and the doctor should be able to kill the baby after it's outside of the womb. Now, to me, that is an enormous amount of historical consistency when you consider that the Democrat Party has always believed itself to be the arbiter of who is a citizen that receives constitutional rights and protections and who is not a citizen that receives constitutional rights and protections. And what I mean by that is very simple. The Supreme Court of the United States at one time said that if you have this color skin, if you have black color skin, then you are not a citizen in this country. That is what the Supreme Court said. Very much like the Supreme Court now says that abortion is fine. Roe versus Wade. And you're telling me that the Democrat Party is still in the business of deciding who's a person and who's not under the Constitution, and it all has to do with whether or not, used to have to do with whether or not you were inside the womb or not. Now it has to do with whether or not the mother decides. It's now the mother's. And by the way, how can you be a mother if you don't have a child? It's now the mother's responsibility. They get to decide. Well, no, you don't have constitutional rights, and that's insane to me. But it is to me the equivalent, and this is what the Democrats have done historically. They always are comfortable going down this path. They're always comfortable taking positions that, 50, 100 years later, we find morally reprehensible. We find, whether you agree with it or not, I disagree with it, but we find it so morally reprehensible generally in society that we have young people, snowflakes and millennials, that want to tear down statues just because it reminds them of how sick we were when it comes to enslaving African Americans. Now, think about that for a second. The Democrat Party is incredibly consistent when it comes to the way they view who is a human being and who is not a human being under our laws. And by the way, I want to bring up again, the crisis on the southern border is a crisis. It is an emergency, but it's been one of that. It's been like that for decades. You got to remember this. This has just been something that Republicans and Democrats have ignored, but it doesn't make it any less severe. There are 10,000 women who are sex trafficked into this country through our southern border every single year. And not just women, children as well. Why doesn't Nancy Pelosi and the Democrat Party want to do something about it? When you hear people, after the Donald Trump declares the emergency or not declare the emergency and just use the military, whatever he does, when you hear people say it's not really an emergency, you need to remind them about what modern-day slavery is. Modern-day slavery is human trafficking and sex trafficking of children and women who are desperate to come here. As well as, I would argue, modern-day slavery is the pro-abortion movement, because they're doing the same thing they did. They're deciding who's a citizen and who's not a citizen, who gets constitutional rights and who doesn't get constitutional rights. And in their mind, it is arbitrary. It is an arbitrary line in the sand that can change from one day to the next. It's much simpler if you just believe that it's life at conception. So I say all that to say this. Does anyone think it's a coincidence that this is all happening? We have the governor of Virginia, the delegate from Virginia, the Democrat Party's true beliefs on what abortion is, what they believe the limits are, which is simply limitless. And then all of a sudden we get a photo of the governor of Virginia. Did I say North Carolina? The governor of Virginia. And he's in blackface. Or at least he said it was him first, but then he said it's not him. Show this photo. So here's the governor of Virginia, Governor Northam. And here is a picture in this is his high school or college yearbook where he is in blackface standing next to a guy in a KKK hood. And now he said that this was him and he was sorry. And then he had another press conference where he said, well, actually, no, that after looking at it further, that's not me. That actually wasn't him, he says now. But he did at one point, just in case anyone has a photo of it, he does want you to know he did do blackface at one point and dress up as Michael Jackson because he could do the moonwalk. So that's a thing that happened over the weekend, or at least I guess it happened on Friday. Now there's all the Democrats calling for him to resign. Now, I want you to notice something. We're no longer talking about his radical views on murder. We're no longer talking about his radical views on the fact that he believes you can murder a baby after it's born if the mother wants to. We're no longer talking about that. Where did this photo come from? People just say, oh, it was a tip from a concerned citizen. Or it was, I don't know, the Democrat Party maybe. They pull out a file on Northam and say, we got to get this guy out of here. I can't believe he gave us away. And so now people are calling for him to resign. There are even Democrats saying, you know what, at this point, I heard it. I heard a guy on CNN, Democrat on CNN, said, you know what, at this point, it doesn't matter if it isn't him. Meaning if he's innocent. It doesn't even matter because of the implication. He's just got to get out of here. I just thought, wow. They at least they're being consistent. They're applying the same Brett Kavanaugh standard they are to their own people. Now, do you think this is even right? I mean, I think it's just ridiculous. It's the Democrat Party's crazy standards, though, that they hoist on everybody. And did you see that CNN, when the story broke about the blackface and the KKK, CNN labeled him a Republican in their graphic because CNN is fake news and the enemy of the American people. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I want to welcome back to the program from the great Patriots of X 746. We have Mr. Tim Loggins with us. Tim, how are you?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
Doing really good. I want to remind everybody that if you guys want to know more about your gun rights out there, you need to go to facebook.com and search for Patriots of X 746 and request to become a member of that group right now, because they are on a mission to educate you and your family out there about how Arkansas is a constitutional carry state. You do not need a permit to carry open or concealed. And we're about to talk a little bit more about that. I want to remind everybody, Tim, you guys have been right for 5 years about what Act 746 did, and it basically gave the people a lot more freedom than they had before.
Absolutely, Paul. Act 746, amended 573-120, the statute on...
Times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
It's all the puzzle pieces coming together. That's what I think. Gene on Facebook writing, I'm not triggered or upset because I did not watch any of the football game. A lot of people didn't because, the kneeling thing and the NFL and everything else. Last I checked, the NFL, how much is the NFL paying taxes? Oh, yeah. Last I checked, it was 0. Big fat zero. Bread and circuses, ladies and gentlemen. Bread and circuses. A lot of people are triggered because the Patriots won, though. That is something to think about. Remember, Harry Potter tried to put a spell on Tom Brady last week because Tom Brady apparently, I haven't actually seen a photo of this, Tom Brady has a Make America Great Again hat in his locker, and he says, I'm friends with the president. They've been friends for many years. I don't always agree with the president. You know, he has to, because who's going to say I agree with somebody 100% of the time? Everyone assumes that if you're friends with somebody that you agree with them 100% of the time. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like you can be friends with people, and obviously you're not the same person, so you're going to have disagreements. But we live in a society now that if you're friends with somebody, that means you must endorse everything they've ever done in their life. So because that's what the media does, if you're friends with the president, you have to say, yeah, I'm friends with him, but I don't agree with everything he does. It's so ridiculous. It's like we want to split into factions, and we want to beat each other up, if not worse. Like it's just a natural human tendency. Anyway, a lot of people are triggered that the Patriots won. Number one, it's the Patriots. Oh. The New England Patriots. There's a lot of people in this country that would have rather us stayed Old England. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl. It triggers people because he knows President Trump and is friends with him.
Carrying a weapon, and what it did was decriminalize carrying a weapon. You don't need a permit to carry a weapon openly concealed in your purse, on or about your person in your vehicle. No permit required, and you'd be surprised how many people still don't know that.
So I want to talk about House Resolution 1013, Tim. This is a big deal. State Representative Brant Smith, the title, to clarify gun rights. Whereas the citizens of the state deserve clarity in regard to gun rights and gun laws. Whereas in the recent Jamie Taft versus State of Arkansas case, the Court of Appeals gave judicial clarity and affirmed that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state with no permit required to carry a handgun either openly or concealed. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of Arkansas that the House of Representatives acknowledge this decision for the clarity it provides to the citizens of the state in regard to gun rights. What's your reaction to this bill filed by State Representative Brant Smith, Tim?
I embrace this resolution with open arms. It's well past due. I thank Representative Brant Smith for carrying this torch, for having the courage of his convictions to stand up and say, look, guys, this is enough. This manufactured confusion has to stop. The judicial branch has been clear on what the law is since 746 passed, and we've still had those that either don't like it or believe that we don't have a right to keep and bear arms, that keep saying, well, the law is unclear. That's just not true. Taft proved that. And Brant Smith said, you know what, this is enough. And for those that say we need legislative clarity, here's a resolution, and I'll tell you what, here's our legislative clarity. Here's what we believe the law says. And I thank him for the courage of this, to carry this resolution.
It's a pretty new bill as far as it hasn't been filed very long. Which committee do you anticipate it going through? I know the Senate is doing gun bills through the city, county, local committee. Will the House still put it in a judiciary committee, you think?
I think this will probably run in judiciary in the House tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
For those that are interested, looks like it might be 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Okay. We're about to find out who actually, well, in my opinion, we're about to find out who is going to honestly admit what the law says. You may have a problem with open carry. There may be people out there that have a problem with concealed carry or constitutional carry. Just because you have a problem with it or you disagree with it does not change what the law says. So I would encourage all legislators to seriously look at what the status of the gun laws are, look at the court cases, look at how prosecutors are.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Here's a headline from last week. You know, last week, the entire country was colder than normal. I think most of you know this. But we heard these stories. I mean, down here in Arkansas, folks, not so much. I mean, we had cold temperatures, but it wasn't anything that we aren't used to, right? But then, of course, you know, up north, you have people, you know, experiencing the negative, you know, negative 10, 20, 30, I think even 50 degrees. I mean, and you had all these, you know, stories about millennials who have never experienced this kind of cold before. This headline over at Breitbart: Donald Trump keeps mocking global warming leftists with record cold temperatures. Because, you know, I'm telling you, there's so many things that Donald Trump does to troll the other side that talk radio's been doing for years. Like, every time it's cold, like, as a talk radio host, I'm always like, oh, yeah, global warming. Hey, did you hear it's so cold outside? I saw a Democrat with his hands in his own pockets. Anyway, so here to talk a little bit more about this, I want to introduce you to a guy who is author of a book by the name of Inconvenient Facts. You should look it up on Amazon. Inconvenient Facts: The Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. He's a geologist with more than 35 years of experience researching and studying various aspects of Earth's processes. His name is Gregory Wrightstone. Gregory, welcome to the program this morning.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Now, that was funny about the Democrats with their hands in their own pockets. I hadn't heard that one.
I don't know. I heard it a long time ago. I don't know. I certainly didn't make it up. Gregory, what are the chances that I'm interviewing a geologist by the last name of Wrightstone? You've got to have heard that one before, right?
Oh, you'd be surprised how many people pass up on that. Yeah, it's incredible. There's another guy. I talk a lot in hurricane season about hurricanes, and the top hurricane guy at NOAA is a guy whose last name is Landsea, Christopher Landsea. What a great name for a hurricane guy.
That's fantastic.
Almost as good as a guy by the name of Wrightstone as a geologist.
That's exactly right. Well, so tell us about this. Inconvenient Facts: The Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. What made you want to write that book?
Yeah, I didn't set out to write a book. I really didn't. I set out to seek the truth. This was a quest for the truth. As a geologist, I knew some of what we were being told about climate change was just wrong. It just was. I knew it through my scientific background with geology. I suspected other things were, but you know, and your listeners know, we hear so much contradictory information. So I said, you know, I'm going to set out, and I set out, again, to seek the truth, and I went back to the base data from NASA, from NOAA, from peer-reviewed studies, and frankly, what I found out was shocking. Most of what we're being told about climate change, the actual science, facts, and data tells it's 180 degrees opposite. Now, it's not. I'm not saying climate change isn't happening. It is. I'm not saying that carbon dioxide and human-caused carbon dioxide isn't increasing. It is. And I admit that increase in CO2 has a warming effect on the atmosphere. It has to. It does. But I'll just argue it's fairly modest and greatly overwhelmed by the same natural forces driving temperatures since the dawn of time. And the other aspect to this, the second half, is these climate alarmists will tell you of all these horrific, what I call climate apocalypse events they're going to happen 50 or 80 years in the future. I look at what's actually happening today, and as we get into this discussion, you'll learn more about this, but I see an Earth that's prospering, thriving, and greening. I see an Earth and humanity that are also prospering and thriving. And I see that it's due to climate change. Climate change is having an overwhelmingly beneficial result on humanity and the Earth.
Well, so, you know, when you talk about that, I've always, you know, thought about the fact that, like, you know, yeah, of course, climate changes. You know, sometimes there's a place that'll get colder, and then there's another place on the Earth that'll get warmer, and you know, there's kind of a give and take there. But the whole question is, like you were just saying, you know, this idea of man-made climate change, meaning the answer is, and this is just my interpretation, the answer is always socialism. That's always the answer to try to fix climate change.
Oh, it is. Yeah, and what they need to do, they want things like the Paris Climate Accords. They want things like a carbon tax. This is a huge new revenue source for governments. And Paris Climate Accord just enables global governance of individual countries. What we see here is that the new Green New Deal that was just proposed by an alarming number of Democrats and even more alarming by some Republicans. I'm not exaggerating when I say that is a socialist manifesto masquerading as environmental policy. It just is. Just the litany of nearly every socialist proposal over the last 30 years is included and thrown into this thing, from guaranteed jobs for all at a living wage to cutting military spending by 50% and closing bases all over the world. It's a crazy hodgepodge. And in fact, you and your listeners may not be aware, but within that Green New Deal, they're going to discourage or forbid non-essential private transportation. In other words, you can't get in your car and drive out to Home Depot anymore. You'll have to take the bus, and it'll be through a new federal mass transit system, so everybody can get around without driving there. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is
crazy. And that's the tip of the iceberg of what's in this Green New Deal. Be afraid.
Yeah, and that certainly is their dream. We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone. He's the author of Inconvenient Facts: The Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. He is a geologist. He's been doing this for 35 years. So when it comes to man-made climate change, let's say that they're right and that we're having this massive, we've got to alter our behavior in a way. To me, it's just preposterous that we would know even how to alter our behavior and that we could affect the weather. I mean, and I say the weather because that's really, to me, what they're doing. I mean, I say this, I've said this a lot of times. Anytime I have somebody who is an authority like yourself on, here in Arkansas several years ago, we had some tornadoes came through, and they were just devastating to some local communities here. And about that time, under the Obama administration, they released a report saying that we have to do something about climate change, and if we do, we won't see these weather events like tornadoes that, we live in Tornado Alley. We've always seen tornadoes. And I just thought how offensive that is. Like, if you drive less, or if you get an electric car or some hybrid car, maybe your house would have still been there. And the tornado, it's insane. It's like doing a rain dance. I think you'd have better luck controlling the weather doing a rain dance. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's get back to this about whether or not man's controlling. There are a couple of scientists that I respect that do believe that the increase in CO2 may be affecting up to 50% of the temperature rise we've seen over the last 150 or so years. I'll disagree with them. The majority of skeptics don't believe that. But even so, if you look at the climate models that are used, they overpredict the warming that we will see by 2.5 to 3 times too much. And, if we look in the rearview mirror, let's just have your listeners put on their thinking caps. Look in the rearview mirror. What have we seen for the last 100 or 150 years? We've seen the greatest advances in technology, agriculture, humanity, life-saving medicines, decreases in worldwide poverty, advances in energy. We see nothing but we've had in the last 100, 150 years, 5,000 years of advances squeezed into the last 100 or so years. Just complete wonderful things happening. These guys look forward, and they see nothing but doom and despair, calamity, death, apocalypse. Well, if we look through the last, say, 4,500 years of human history, we see that there were other warming periods very similar to what we're in right now, and each one of those ended up a lot warmer than we are right now. And each one of those warming periods was associated with a great rise in civilization and prosperity for humanity. There's the one thing, if your listeners take nothing else away, there's a strong correlation between the rise and fall of temperatures and the rise and fall of civilizations. That during warm periods, the food is bountiful, crops are bountiful, you can feed the population. And if during the cold periods is when really the crap hit the fan, we would see crop failure, pestilence, and mass depopulation every time. Rise and fall of civilizations correlates to the rise and fall of temperatures, and they're telling us just the opposite. Each one of these warming periods were very, very, very beneficial. In fact, I've got a YouTube channel. If you look at Inconvenient Facts YouTube, I've got a great video on there on the relationship between the witch hunts of Europe in the late Middle Ages and the rise and fall of temperatures. It's really cool.
Wow.
Real strong relationship. There might have been 20 or 30,000 supposed witches killed, burned at the stake, or drowned during that time frame. And it was all because of, as we went into the devastating cold temperatures of the Little Ice Age, crops failed, and half the population of Iceland perished. It's thought a third of the population of the entire Earth perished during that time, and it's related to cold. It's not. It's the warm periods that are really, really good historically, and they're telling us just the opposite. And can I jump? You had also mentioned about tornadoes. 26 tornadoes have definitely been a long-term decline. 2016 had the second fewest tornadoes, F3 or greater, in the history of NOAA, and that goes back to 1850. 2013 had the lowest. So here in the last few years, we've had the first and second lowest number of tornadoes in history in the United States. Again, completely opposite of what we're being told.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about what we are being told. More importantly, who is doing the telling. So where does the media come in here, and what responsibility do they have? I mean, they're the ones that have got an entire generation of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thinking that we've only got 12 years left on the planet.
Yeah, I can kind of. She's not the brightest bulb in our arsenal, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean,
so,
I was saying the other day. I mean, blondes everywhere are thanking her. I mean, she's putting it into dumb blonde jokes.
Can I borrow that?
You can. It was a meme.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that one either.
Okay. All right. Well, you're getting some good ones there, but you're right. I don't really so much blame her because she's a product of what we're being told, and we're being told that supposedly by 97% of the scientists, which is, I do put a whole chapter in my book. And your listeners can learn more by going to inconvenientfacts.xyz, and which you can do there. And where was I going with that? With the Green New Deal. If I open the book up, why are they doing it? I think is the question. And I open the book up with a quote from H.L. Mencken, and he talks about how governments and institutions need to impose what he calls imaginary hobgoblins of alarm. And they use these hobgoblins of alarm to frighten the population. And the population needs to be scared to death in order to accept otherwise onerous and punishing regulations like the Paris Climate Accord or carbon tax. I mean, well, let me ask, why in the world would we, Paul, impose economically crippling sanctions on the United States? Why would we do it? We wouldn't. The only reason to do it is if we're standing on the edge of this climate apocalypse precipice, and that by decreasing our carbon dioxide output, we could forestall that looming apocalypse. So they need a frightened population. We see no better evidence of that than in this last national climate assessment released back in December to great fanfare. I mean, that thing was like it was like a walk through the book of Revelation. They predicted everything but flaming toads falling out of the sky. Their main thing they pointed at was forest fires, which I use when I talk to people all over the country, and if there's a group down in your neck of the woods that want me to come speak, we can talk about it. It will be entertaining and enlightening and scientific. But I use forest fires as a great example because this last National Climate Assessment on the front and back pages had pictures of forests in flame. And they flatly stated that increasing forest fires were due to global warming. But the experts and the data tell us exactly the opposite. Forest and wildfires have been in a long-term decline for more than 100 years, and the experts at the Canadian Fire Service and here in the United States tell it's due to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Even in California, the CAL FIRE data, if you go to my website, I've got a page devoted to it. You can see the data on California. I've got a blog on the California fires. You can see what CAL FIRE says. The CAL FIRE data shows that California, the number of fires, get this, hold on, has been declined by 50% over the last 30 or so years. Who knew? You didn't, did you?
No, not at all.
Everybody, before I got into it and looked at it, I thought forest fires were increasing. Well, why wouldn't you? That's what we're being told. But the data is stark and clear and overwhelming that forest fires are decreasing. It's because of an increase in soil moisture content, which is dampening the fires. And that soil moisture increase is due to a combination of increasing temperatures leading to more precipitation. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And also CO2 fertilization effect mean that plants don't need as much water, so they're not they're not sucking the water out of the soil and contributing to the aridity. Because there are three things you need for a forest fire. You need an ignition source, you need fuel, and you need arid conditions. And man is contributing to the detriment of all three of those.
Wow. Well, and you also have Smokey the Bear. I mean, only I can prevent forest fires. He's been telling me that for a while. So, I mean, maybe that's some of it, too.
Yeah, it's forest man. In California, we see, although number has declined, the area burned has increased.
Right.
And that's due to poor forest management.
Yeah, and the president actually has even said that. We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone. Last question on this. Are you alarmed at all, speaking of climate alarmists, are you alarmed at all with it's almost a religion to some of these individuals in terms of if you disagree, then you are a heretic?
Well, I'm called a science denier a lot, and I'm attacked pretty good. But I feel like an old time evangelist traveling the country, spreading the good news of the gospel of increasing CO2. I see benefits, not horrific consequences. And I'll advise. We just got approval yesterday from Apple for our new smartphone app. It's a powerful tool. If they go to the app store, either for Android or Apple, and search for Inconvenient Facts, you'll get all this information, the 60 facts in a chart, associated videos in the palm of your hand. Powerful tool.
Awesome.
Powerful.
Awesome. Well, I'm certainly going to check it out. Folks, he's Gregory Wrightstone. He's a geologist. He's an author. The book is Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. Gregory, it's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you for spending time with us this morning.
You bet. Stay warm.
All righty. You too. Folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Dropping gun charges across the state. The citizens do deserve clarity. They deserve predictability, reliability. That's what good government is. So it makes no sense whatsoever for any legislator, even if you disagree, it makes no sense for you to not admit what the law actually says.
Absolutely, Paul. And that's really the brilliance of this resolution. We're not trying to change the law. We've resisted that call that, some that don't like what the law is have said we need to clarify it. This is just simply saying, hey, guys, this is what the law is. And if you want to introduce legislation that does away with constitutional carry, that's fine. We can have that debate. But this debate on this resolution is about the status of the law right now. Mm-hmm. And the way the law is right now, you don't need a permit to carry openly or concealed. And this reaffirms that. And, oh, by the way, the Taft decision gave us a case law, a precedent, that confirmed it already.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so tomorrow on the program, we'll have Mr. Josh Waters back with us. We'll be going over week number 3 of the 92nd General Assembly, the Conduit for Action scorecard, some bills that are being watched, those that are supported, those that are opposed, if any. And so we'll definitely be talking about that. Be watching for that article to drop later today. Also, tomorrow on the program, State Representative John Eubanks. We're going to talk about his deregulation bill when it comes to expanding the scope of practice for optometrists. So excited to talk to State Representative Eubanks about that. As well as later in the week, we'll also be talking, remember Dr. Warren Farrell? You remember him? He came on, and he's the author of a book called The Boy Crisis. You remember this? Well, he is – I've been trying to get him on the program. He's been very, very busy in light of the Covington Catholic boy scandal, with the fake news about the Native American Nathan Phillips and that photo that was by the way, all these media personalities and celebrities are about to be sued by the attorneys. He's got like 7 attorneys working on this. And those that slandered him are going to be sued, which is going to be pretty interesting to see if they end up paying. I mean, even the New York Times is mentioned. But I wanted to have Dr. Farrell on because, this was he was caught being a white male wearing a hat that has a political slogan that half the country finds offensive. That's essentially what happened here. And so he's author of this book called The Boy Crisis, and he has a very interesting perspective. So we'll be talking to him later in the week on that as well. And coming up, we've got a schedule that we're still filling out here, but we will have Congressman Rick Crawford on the program Friday. State Representative Brant Smith will be on Friday as well, because one of the biggest things that I'm looking forward to this week as I cover what goes on at the Marble Palace is on Thursday, Brant Smith will be presenting his resolution clarifying that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, meaning you need no permit to carry concealed or open. Now, regardless of what happens, it's not going to change what the judge has already said in Taft versus Arkansas. It's not going to change that. But this is really and truly, the question is whether or not our legislators will start the conversation, pass this resolution, and use their positions as public officials to clarify what the people's rights are. Because we have people who are in maybe more prestigious, have more of a bully pulpit stance, specifically the Attorney General and the Governor, who have not come out and correctly identified what the law is, specifically what prosecutors have said about it, and now what a judge has ruled about it in dicta, in his opinion, about whether or not you can be, detained just because you have a weapon that's visible. And the answer is you can't. That's not assault. You don't have probable cause because in Arkansas, the burden of proof is extremely high to charge somebody with the possession of a weapon. So we're really watching. That Thursday will be very, very interesting. The Capitol, I'm sure, is going to be packed with a lot of Patriots of Act 746 folks. So definitely want to stay tuned. Also, later in the week, Dr. Patrick Wolf will be on the program. We're going to be talking about school choice and the importance of school choice. And you definitely don't want to miss that interview. All right, so we have one more hour coming your way next. We're going to dive right in. Going to dive right into some things that happened last week at the Marble Palace that fell through the cracks. People are still talking about horse massage, and I'll tell you more about that next.
Talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Dropping gun charges across the state. The citizens do deserve clarity. They deserve predictability, reliability. That's what good government is. So it makes no sense whatsoever for any legislator, even if you disagree, it makes no sense for you to not admit what the law actually says.
Absolutely, Paul. And that's really the brilliance of this resolution. We're not trying to change the law. We've resisted that call that, some that don't like what the law is have said we need to clarify it. This is just simply saying, hey, guys, this is what the law is. And if you want to introduce legislation that does away with constitutional carry, that's fine. We can have that debate. But this debate on this resolution is about the status of the law right now. And the way the law is right now, you don't need a permit to carry openly or concealed, and this reaffirms that. And, oh, by the way, the TAP decision gave us a case law, a precedent, that confirmed it already. So what we're doing is we're having the legislature acknowledge what case law is.
Yep.
And I appreciate Branch Smith for that.
Well, it'll be interesting debate. It'll be interesting to see what kind of legislators we have. I know we got some good ones. But this will be very interesting to see, and I definitely know the Patriots of Act 746 will be watching, as well as the entire state of Arkansas. Tim.
Well, Paul, we've been having meetings all over the state the past couple of years, and we've had multiple legislators come to these meetings all across the state, and there has yet to be a single legislator that disagrees what the law says. In Northeast Arkansas, we've had as many as 10 legislators at some of our meetings, and every one of them agrees, yeah, this is what the law says, no permits required. Mm-hmm. And this gives them an avenue to stand up and be counted and be recognized, and we appreciate that.
Okay, so that's a great law. Looking forward to that. Let's talk about the repeal of 127. What do you mean about that? What do you mean about the repeal of 127?
A lot of folks don't even know what 127 is. 573-127 is an arcane law that was passed in the 80s, and it designates spots all over the state that are gun-free zones. And it lists them by, unincorporated townships and county roads and state highways. So in other words, if you cross this highway, you're supposed to stop and unload your weapon and put it up. If you live in one of these areas, you can't even walk your dog down the street and be armed to protect yourself. Arcane law that needs to go away. Representative Jimmy Gazaway has agreed to carry a straight repeal of 127. And let's start this conversation. You know, Arkansas is a conservative state that believes in gun rights. And most folks don't realize there's 3 laws that list multiple gun-free zones all across this state where you can't carry a weapon and you don't have a right to defend yourself. We all know that 98% of all mass fatalities occur in gun-free zones, and we're having the wrong conversation. We don't need to go about this by permitting or passing a new law. Or what we need to do is repeal some of these laws, make gun-free zones fewer, and expand the rights for Arkansans. And I appreciate Representative Jimmy Gasaway for carrying this important start.
What places? What are the places, if you can list a few, that you can't carry now that you would be able to if we repealed 127?
There's places all around the lakes, like Norfolk, like Bull Shoals, Bella Vista, Hot Springs Village, above the Cap Rock at Pettit Jean State Park. I mean, it's a crazy law that I have no idea why it was written. And it actually lists townships and county roads and state highways that, this is the boundary of the gun-free zone. Most folks don't even realize this. We've got thousands of Arkansans that are breaking this law every day and don't even know it. This law needs to go away.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. That's a good argument if you're breaking the law and don't even know it. We're talking with Tim Loggins with the Patriots of X746. Now, do you know when that bill's going to run in committee by chance, Tim?
Representative Gasaway indicated it would possibly be filed this week. So if it is, I would anticipate it being run next week.
Okay. All right, let's talk about State Representative Aaron Pilkington. He's gotten a lot of positive press, at least from conservatives, about his Stand Your Ground bill. I was on the Dave Ellswick show on this station for about 30 minutes yesterday. I was talking with Jan Morgan and R.D. Hopper, Paul Calvert, and, of course, Dave Ellswick. And somebody said that the Sheriff's Association is against.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us today. This is hour number 2. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine, and we can't do this without you. Now, we are in week number 3, the beginning of week number 3 of the Arkansas General Assembly, the 92nd General Assembly. And who knows, we may hear the governor's tax cut plan, income tax plan. We may hear this being run today, or maybe it'll be run later in the week. Who knows? We also are looking forward at other bills, a resolution this week that's supposed to be run on Thursday concerning constitutional carry, clarifying what the Taft decision versus Arkansas, or Taft versus the state of Arkansas said, what the judge put in his opinion about constitutional carry, permitless carry, that sort of thing. Really excited about that. Who knows what else will be thrown your way? We covered a little bit about Austin McCullum's bill last week, I guess on Thursday, that passed out of public health that would prevent licensing boards from taking away a license from profession if they fall behind on their student loan debt. Other states are doing that, which doesn't make any sense. That means that you don't have the license to make money to pay the student loans. So anyway, that's a really good bill, and we missed one though. Well, we missed one to tell you about, I guess. So interesting little exchange happened, and I actually am monitoring this, but interesting exchange happened last week. Do you guys remember the bill that was going to require licensure for equine massage? I'll give you an update on that next, but do you remember that? Okay. So there's another bill out there that, let's see, is it HB 1264? Is that what it is? Yeah. To amend the exemption to licensure by the Veterinary Medical Examining Board for chiropractors performing chiropractic procedures on animals. Or what was it? Was it chiropractic? Is that how you would say it? Anyway, so this bill is, the lead sponsor is State Representative John Payton, who is a conservative-minded individual. And State Representative John Payton and his bill, HB 1264, was passed out of the Committee on Agriculture on Wednesday of last week. And it was pretty unanimous. I mean, there was really not much debate, but the vets sent a guy to testify against this. So right now, if you are a chiropractor and you want to do some work on, let's say, a horse, you have to have a vet supervising you. Even though a chiropractor, in order to be able to do work on animals, has to go through like an additional 200-something hours of training in order to be certified to do it. And they're saying even after that fact, they have to have a vet there. So this would be saying the vet doesn't have to be there and the chiropractor can. You know what? Thankfully, because of the transparency that the cameras and the streaming service provides. Joe, let's go ahead and cue this up. If you'll go to the Arkansas House website here, we have it right there. This is the Agriculture Committee last Wednesday, chaired by the infamous State Representative Dan Douglas. And whenever you're ready, Joe, take it away.
Committee to order. First order of business here is a bill by Representative John Payton, House Bill 1264. Representative, you're recognized to present your bill and make any adjustments to the law that you need to. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. The floor is yours.
Stop. This is a bill about chiropractor operating or adjusting animals, and Dan Douglas right out of the gate makes a pun. Just love it. All right, keep going.
Thank you, Mr. Esteemed Chair.
You missed it? Back up.
And committee.
So Joe says he doesn't know what the punning is. Let's go ahead.
Order of business here is a bill by Representative John Payton, House Bill 1264. Representative, you're recognized to present your bill and make any adjustments to the law that you need to. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. The floor is yours.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Esteemed Chair and committee. So bring before you House Bill 1264. And give you a little bit of background. It's a one-page bill, just eliminating a little bit of language in the code.
Page.
So currently, if you're a licensed chiropractor in the state of Arkansas, you can work on humans from birth till death, okay? Because you've been through a lot of training and you're a licensed chiropractor. If you decide you want to work on animals, there's a path to do that. And if you read there in that paragraph, you go to the American Veterinary Chiropractic Association. I'm told that consists of 225 hours of classroom training, plus you have to demonstrate that you can manipulate the animal after that, which is not classroom training, and many more hours of work. But we go a step further than those two requirements, and we say that if you're going to do it, you also have to be in the immediate supervision of a veterinarian. Now, the veterinarian doesn't have to have ever been trained in chiropractic at all, and does not have to have went to this 225 hours of schooling, but the law says he has to be within arm's reach. That's immediate supervision. So you can imagine that that's not only cumbersome to try to make sure you schedule something to where you have the vet present and the chiropractor, but it's expensive for our farmers and our horse riders and people that want to utilize chiropractic on their animals. So I just propose that we eliminate the requirement to have a veterinarian in immediate supervision. I believe that being a licensed chiropractor that can work on humans and having the extra 225 hours of training to work on animals is sufficient to protect those animals, and I'd appreciate a good vote.
Okay.
I'll answer any questions.
So he's explained.
Okay, members, Representative Payton's explained the bill. Are there any questions? Representative Jett, you're recognized. Good job.
Representative Payton, is there any pushback from anybody that you know?
Well, of course, this came up kind of quickly for me and for the filing in the committee. I contacted the veterinarian board and the secretary, and she contacted a few board members, and I got a reply back that they didn't have any heartburn over it. That's not an endorsement, I understand. And so this morning I became aware, and I think we will have somebody that wants to come up and speak in a moment, that they forwarded it out through the Veterinarian Association, and there are some veterinarians that are, concerned. So I think he'll express that in a minute.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Members, any other questions for Representative Payton? Okay, is there anyone to speak against the bill? Mr. Rodney Baker, you're recognized to come to the table and
so now we've got
tell us who you are and who you're with, and
the Vet
explain your side of the story,
and they're,
the rest of the
they're
story.
against this deregulation idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rodney Baker, and I'm here today representing the Veterinary Medical Association. And Mr. Payton has already described the conversation that he and I had an hour or so ago, and that I learned about the bill yesterday. I have circulated my people. I have my leadership. I've got some concerns that have been expressed for, the possibility, for example, that an animal could be injured during this practice and there's no one there trained to take care of that injury. Also, these are nonverbal animals. Obviously, they can't, everything is subjective as to whether or not it's helping or not at that point in time. This is designed to protect the animal. And so from that standpoint, there may be another way to address this besides just eliminating that language altogether, maybe a modification. I'm not sure, and I'm not here to propose one today, but I would urge this committee to consider passing over it at this time and allow us to bring some veterinarians in to meet with the sponsor or to come to the committee at another time. And that's where I am today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be glad to take questions.
So they're
are there any questions, members, for
nonverbal animals,
Mr. Baker?
And so that's why the vet needs to be there after the
Representative
chiropractor's already been through the training.
I appreciate you coming this morning. Just real quick, when I go see the chiropractor, I don't have my physician in the room. So to me, I just see if they're certified to do what they're going to do. And the owner of that horse is certainly going to make sure that that horse is well taken care of and can definitely, anyway, I just think it's for the owner to decide. So anyway, just want to know if you thought, if you ever go to the chiropractor or if your physician is present when you go to the chiropractor.
Representative, I've never been to a chiropractor, but, whether or not you might injure a horse significantly in this may be one thing, but there are other animals much smaller that could, through manipulations, be injured.
Anything.
So it's not just one species; it's across species, which probably is another complication. I'm not a veterinarian, and I'm not a chiropractor. I'm certainly not a physician. But I think we need to bring some of these people together to talk about this and get the different perspectives.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. One question I have, Mr. Baker.
Yes, sir.
You said that because these are nonverbal animals,
yes, sir.
You're not suggesting that veterinarians can talk to the animals, are you?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Just want to clarify.
I'm just suggesting that the animal can't say, stop, it hurts.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, sir.
I could walk with the animals.
Anybody to speak for the bill?
Animals.
Anybody else speak against the bill?
Fantastic.
Okay, Representative Payton.
This is going to be my favorite committee.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a little closing comment. I appreciate y'all's time, but, a couple of the concerns that he brought up there, if a chiropractor is already licensed to work on humans, that is whether they are infants or elderly. They may be nonverbal. They may be unable to communicate also. And they do hold, some high-level training to be a chiropractor. So, then they have to get...
State Representative Payton makes great points. This bill passed out of the committee, out of the Agriculture Committee, which is now going to be my favorite committee, I have a feeling. We had a pun, and we had a question if vets are Dr. Doolittle. You cannot get much better than that. Was just on a Wednesday. That was on a random Wednesday at the Arkansas Capitol. State Representative Dan Douglas, chair of the Ag Committee. Really, really glad that this bill passed. Now, it's a simple bill, right? A lot of people wouldn't. This is how messed up Arkansas is. You've got chiropractors that have to have vet supervision when they're already trained to work and adjust animals. So weird, right? So this is common sense. Now, that got me thinking about State Representative Sarah Capps' bill. Now, her bill is HB 1146. Now, I noticed something when I was looking this bill up this morning, that it has now been changed. It's a different bill. You can now look this up, but I've got the other versions of this bill. Okay? So originally, this bill, 1146, originally was entitled An Act Concerning Equine Massage to Require Licensure or Certification for Equine Massage. It was to increase the licensing requirements for equine massage. Now, we did a segment on this, and, it was kind of funny because I was just saying to myself, I don't know why Republicans want to create new regulations, especially when you have other states that say regulating equine massage actually eliminated the position of equine masseuses. The bill is now changed, which is a really good thing, and there's more sponsors. Representative Capp now has Craig Christensen and John Payton, as well as Senator Gary Stubblefield on the Senate side, sponsoring House Bill 1146. And the title is something that reads completely different. An act concerning equine massage to exempt equine massage therapy from licensure by the Vet Medical Examining Board and for other purposes. This seems like it's going to do the complete opposite of what the original bill was going to do, which I think is a positive thing. That's a great news that we have a bill here, and probably because there was public attention. I first heard of this bill regulating, increasing barriers to equine massage from Dr. Jeremy Horpadal's Twitter feed from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics. Then I did a segment on it. I think it was just a random segment on a Friday, and thankfully, for whatever the reason is, the title of the bill is changed, and there's different sponsors to it. That says that they're trying to eliminate, to exempt equine massage therapy from having to have a license. So I just wanted to point that out, that there are legislators who file bills and then, can reverse course on those bills. So I'm going to keep watching this, but I thought that was an interesting development. The current version of the bill is complete, at least the title is saying that it's going to do completely the opposite of what the initial title was going to be. So that's some news, some interesting news in my opinion. I know it's all about horses. I know it's a lot about horses, but hey, there's regulations for everything out there. Matter of fact, coming up here in a little bit, just in terms of, all of these other states, there are organizations out there that will give you snapshots of what your state is financially, regulatory wise and everything else compared to other states. I came across this website called the State Data Lab. You can go to statedatalab.org, and I found this on Friday after I got off the air, it's a ranking of Arkansas or other states, and they ranked us back in September of last year. So it's pretty recent. It's done by a bunch of people that they call themselves truthinaccounting.org. They're trying to reflect the most accurate financial state of each state, financial state of Arkansas and the rest of them. I'll give you those numbers later in the program. And I want to remind you guys, if you like what we're doing here, feel free to go to our Patreon page and subscribe for extra videos. We do extra video once a week. The last video we did was this past Friday. We put it out, and it actually was on this abortion situation, but it was more of a different take. I kind of took comfort in the fact that Romans chapter 1 in the Bible actually is very comforting when it shows you what society is capable of, and to me, it just shows our need for Jesus. And so I did our Patreon video last week on that. But for as little as $5 a month or more, however much you want to give, but for as little as $5 a month, you can support Conduit News Radio and get an extra video every week exclusive to you. And you can do that if you go to patreon.com/CNR. I just want to remind everybody about that. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Aaron Pilkington, Stand Your Ground Law. Have you heard something similar?
I know that the Sheriff's Association met yesterday with members of the judiciary down in the House. They expressed opposition to the concept of the Stand Your Ground Law. And I want to clear this up. This isn't a Stand Your Ground Law. Nowhere does it say Stand Your Ground. What this bill would do would give us one standard, and that is, am I in fear for my life? When I can use deadly force to defend my life or my loved ones, and regardless of where I'm at. We already have this if we're in our home or a curtilage, but if we're outside of our home in a place that we're legally allowed to be, like in our car or in public or whatever, then we got to do a retreat assessment before we defend our lives, possibly. And that's a bad law that most citizens don't understand. This bill actually clarifies the law. Confusing enough.
This is Mother Government. My people, the promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous.
I strongly.
And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Oh my goodness. All right, welcome back to the program. I want to remind you guys, last hour we got introduce you to a geologist by the name of Gregory Wrightstone, which is it's like the perfect name for a geologist. Gregory Wrightstone was on the program. He's the author of a book called Inconvenient Facts, The Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. You can check that out. That interview will be up at conduitnews.com later in the day, so make sure that you know what? The easiest thing to do is to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you go subscribe to Conduit News on YouTube, when that video is uploaded, if you click the little bell to receive notifications, you're going to get notified. Oh, hey, here's a new video that I missed. For those of you that maybe only have 15 minutes or something like that and you can't watch the entire 2-hour program, we want to make that available for you, certainly. Over at the Daily Wire, Ryan Saavedra. He works for the Daily Wire as a reporter. He kind of summed up what you missed if you were living under a rock over the weekend. You have the Democrat Kathy Tran of Virginia proposes a bill to allow full-term abortions. The video goes viral. Outrage ensues. Then the governor of Virginia, Democrat Ralph Northam, defends Tran, goes even further and endorses infanticide. Then you have Northam, who then doubled down after the outrage and still says he stood by his comments. And then we have Northam in KKK/blackface photo, and everybody saw that and was outraged. And then the delegate, Kathy Tran, the Democrat, who originally proposed the bill allowing full-term abortions, calls for Governor Northam to resign. And then Governor Northam says, "I'm sorry about that photo. It was me." But then he says, "Oh, no, it wasn't me. Upon closer consideration, but I did do blackface once to impersonate Michael Jackson." This sure is entertaining to watch. Might want to get some popcorn to see where this ends up. I will say this. It's very interesting to me that no one's talking about Governor Northam's infanticide comments anymore because this photo was released.
Aaron Pilkington, stand your ground law. Have you heard something similar?
I know that the Sheriff's Association met yesterday with members of the judiciary down in the House. They expressed opposition to the concept of the stand your ground law. And I want to clear this up. This isn't a stand your ground law. Nowhere does it say stand your ground. What this bill would do would give us one standard, and that is, am I in fear for my life? When I can use deadly force to defend my life or my loved ones, and regardless of where I'm at. We already have this if we're in our home or a curtilage, but if we're outside of our home in a place that we're legally allowed to be, like in our car or in public or whatever, then we got to do a retreat assessment before we defend our lives, possibly. And that's a bad law that most citizens don't understand. This bill actually clarifies the law. Are confusing enough, and we have a God-given right to defend our lives from violent felonies, from attempted murder, and this law is going to bring that into line. And I would encourage the Sheriff's Association to rethink their position on it. And guys, if you support this concept that no matter where you're at, you have a right to defend your life, call your legislators and tell them you support this.
Yeah, no matter where you're at, if your life's in danger, you have a right to defend your life. I think that's that's part of our God-given right of self-preservation, self-defense. And, somebody else said, a lot of us used to be raised to do the right thing. I mean, I think we still are. But there is this fear. It's, that, well, what if people don't do the right thing? Well, that's a possibility that people don't do the right thing. But because there's a possibility that people may not do the right thing, does that mean you strip your neighbor of his rights? And the answer, of course, is no. And Tim, you're former law enforcement or retired law enforcement. I don't understand, and I love law enforcement. I don't have the courage to be a police officer or a soldier or anything like that. But I do not understand why a law enforcement officer would not want good guys with guns out there. Out there not only protecting themselves but potentially innocent individuals.
I don't think that the rank and file of law enforcement is against this. What I think is stand your ground all across the country, that term. That stand your ground. Nowhere in it does it say stand your ground. What it says is you're presented with this threat, you have the right to use deadly force. And it removes that retreat in complete safety if you're outside.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Happy Monday to everybody out there. Super Bowl winners, of course, were the New England Patriots. If you're just joining us and you cared nothing about the Super Bowl, 13-3 was the final score. It was expected to be an offensive game, but it was just dominated by two dominating defenses, one more so than the other. So that was pretty interesting. I enjoyed the game for what it is, you know. Of course, the halftime show just was weird, as they all are. We talked a little bit about that in the first hour. All right, so real quick, this on Friday I found the Truth in Accounting. Truthinaccounting.org publishes a kind of a rundown on the different states, and it's also at the website statedatalab.org, where you can compare Arkansas to other states. It's whatever you want to do. This just kind of stuck out to me about Arkansas's financial breakdown. And the reason it sticks out to me is because the go-to line when you're talking about Arkansas's finances is that we have a balanced budget amendment, or it's called the Revenue Stabilization Act, which basically prevents us from running a deficit. There are other ways, though, to run a deficit with bonds and things like that, or to acquire debt. Obviously, that's what a bond is. There's also, you look down the pike about teacher retirement and things like that, and a lot of people wonder where the money's going to come from. So right here at the very front page, it says that Arkansas ranks 17th in the country, and it's got a $2.9 billion. We need $2.9 billion to pay our bills. Each taxpayer, the taxpayer burden is minus $3,600, and they give us a financial grade of a C. And the data in this report is derived from the state of Arkansas's 2017 audited comprehensive annual financial report and retirement plans actuarial reports. Okay. So, fast facts. According to truthinaccounting.org, Arkansas has a $6.6 billion or has $6.6 billion available in assets to pay $9.5 billion worth of bills. The outcome is a $2.9 billion shortfall and a $3,600 taxpayer burden. Despite reporting all of its pension debt, the state continues to hide $877.1 million of its retiree health care debt. Arkansas's reported net position is inflated by $621.3 million, largely because the state defers recognizing losses incurred when the net pension liability increases. You see the numbers there, and that's why they give us a C. The bottom line, they write, is Arkansas's taxpayer burden is less than $5,000, so it has received a C for its finances from Truth in Accounting. While better off than many other states, Arkansas still owes more than it owns. Now, the reason this caught my eye, number one, it's not great. It's not good at all. But if you actually look at some other numbers, and there are different ways to get these numbers, but the number that I have had in the past and that we have quoted in the past just based on, basic math is that it costs Arkansas, almost $8,000 a person to fund its government versus the surrounding states where it costs around $5,000 to run its government. And so I don't think those numbers, I think those numbers are accurate. I think when you come up to the each taxpayer share of the debt, see, that's the difference here. They're reporting, Truth in Accounting is reporting each taxpayer share of the debt that Arkansas owes is $3,600. They're not doing the same equation, which is how much does it cost each taxman per person? How much is each person paying if you divide up equally? And it costs about $7,000, almost $8,000 a person to fund the government that we have. So it's actually two different. Just to be clear, it's actually two different numbers or two different equations. So. Anyway, you guys can feel free. I just wanted to give you, this is what some people say, according to the truthinaccounting.org. It's up at the state data lab where they're trying to, accurately assess the financial standing of different states out there. Folks, this is from the Family Council. Let's go here. Moving on. Yesterday, this was on the 29th. So back on the 28th of the month of January, State Representative Brant Smith filed the Medical Conscience Protection Act, otherwise known as HB 1289, protecting healthcare professionals' right of conscience. Family Council writes, this is a good bill that they support. The bill protects healthcare workers and companies from being forced to take part in activities that violate their beliefs, like abortion. HB 1289 clearly states that conscience is a fundamental right, and it protects healthcare professionals and companies from being penalized for following their beliefs. The bill also contains reasonable safeguards to ensure conscience protections cannot be used to deny a person emergency medical care. Arkansas law already offers good protections to doctors and nurses, especially when it comes to abortion, but does not give those same protections to social workers, CNAs, and others who work in the healthcare industry. HB 1289 helps ensure no one can be forced to perform, pay for, or participate in a medical procedure that violates their beliefs. You can thank Representative Smith for sponsoring this bill. They list his phone number there. And again, that it's a good bill. I have it right here in front of me. I'll actually read you the title: 1289, an act to create medical conscience protection and for other purposes. Again, State Representative Brant Smith doing that. I think in light of what we're going through as a nation right now, with what New York is passing, what Virginia's passing, again, nobody really wants to talk about Governor Northam's infanticide comments anymore, because now they found blackface photos of him, or, well, so some people say. And now the left says, you know what, it doesn't even matter if the people in those photos aren't him. He should step down anyway just because, which is a terrible standard to set. You mean if the that's the Brett Kavanaugh standard, right? Well, you know what, it doesn't matter if he's innocent. We've already talked about it so much. I'm just uncomfortable with him being in there. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of blackface, have you heard that Mary Poppins is now racist? That's right. The lovable, wonderful Disney movie Mary Poppins, that I always thought was boring, quite frankly. Mary Poppins has now been branded as a racist movie because of the soot scene, where they've got their faces a little dirty and blacked up. Yeah, according to an academic. Of course, academics are now the modern-day clergy that tell us what's heresy and what's not. She's covered in soot. You remember that scene? Now, I barely remember it, but, there's a photo for you. You see it right there on the screen if you're watching it, facebook.com/Conduit News. The classic family film, Mary Poppins, has now been branded racist by a U.S. academic who accuses Dame Julie Andrews of blacking up with soot while dancing with chimney sweeps. In a piece for the New York Times, Professor Daniel Pollack Pelsner criticizes one of the film's iconic moments when Mary Poppins joins Dick Van Dyke's Bert to dance on a rooftop for the classic song Step in Time. He writes for the New York Times, quote, "When the magical nanny, played by Julie Andrews, accompanies her young charges Michael and Jane Banks up their chimney. Her face gets covered in soot, but instead of wiping it off, she gamely powders her nose and cheeks even blacker. This might seem like an innocuous comic scene if Travers' novel didn't associate chimney sweeps, blackened faces with racial caricature. Don't touch me, you black heathen, a housemaiden screams, and Mary Poppins opens the door. 1943. So is that a different movie? Mary Poppins opens the door? So it's not even the original Mary Poppins. You're saying, okay. Or is that I can't tell. Is he talking about, is that the book or something? Anyway, the New York Times piece goes on here. When the dark figures of the chimney sweeps step in time on a roof, a naval buffoon, Admiral Boom, shouts, "We're being attacked by Hottentots," end quote, and orders his cannon to be fired at the cheeky devils. So there you have it. Now that this academic has declared, so that's the name of the book, is Mary Poppins Opens the Door. So that's the name of the book that the movie was based on. Okay. Anyway, just in case you needed something else, let's say that your list of things to edit out of history because we now find them offensive, but we didn't used to. If you're done with that list, meaning you need more, you're looking for more things to edit and sanitize, if you will. We have to sanitize history now. Mary Poppins is now on the list. So the next time you and your kids watch Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke in the chimney sweep scene, and they're all covered in soot, and she blackens her face even more, just know that scene is racist, and you yourself are probably also racist for watching the movie. And unless you break down and cry and weep because because of the empathy that you have, and then it's okay. Nancy Pelosi tweeting back on February the 2nd, "The photo is racist and contrary to fundamental American values. I join my colleagues in Virginia calling on Governor Northam to do the right thing so that the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia can heal and move forward." Cheryl Atkinson, the former CBS reporter that was spied on by the Obama administration, she tweets, Virginia governor, quote, "This wasn't me in that picture, but I'm pretty sure there are pictures of me earlier in blackface when I won a dance contest as Michael Jackson. Shoe polish is hard to get off, so I didn't use too much." Cheryl Atkinson asking the question, how many times did he use shoe polish on his face? I just think it's hilarious. I mean, no, that's not me. That's not me in the blackface photos next to the guy dressed up in a KKK hood. But in case there are other photos out there, I did dress up in blackface and Michael Jackson one time so I could do the moonwalk. I'm telling you, he tried to demonstrate the moonwalk and his wife stopped him. Because, you want to make sure that you're truthful. Sir, if that's true, do you mind doing the moonwalk for us right now so we don't think that you're also a liar and a racist, but just a racist? This is the left's logic kind of imploding on itself, although I'm very skeptical, and I can't help but think that this photo is awfully convenient. We would still be talking about the governor's comments where he said that the mother can decide to kill the baby after it's born. We were talking about that a lot, and that was gaining a lot of steam. And then the racist photo comes out, or the blackface photo, and they're saying, you need to resign. Get him out of there. Get him out of there. You went too far on the abortion. Get him out of there. And then CNN runs with the story and says that the man is a Republican. I mean, now, if you need any more example, if there's anybody out there, first of all, if this guy was a Republican, it would be wall-to-wall coverage. CNN puts out that the man is a Republican when they first report on the story. It's right there in the graphic. He's a Republican from. There is no way that was an accident. It was intentional. It's absolutely intentional. They need to constantly reinforce this false idea that Republicans are racist. They can't possibly. You understand? There are people that are so brainwashed. They're so brainwashed. It'd be like Pavlov's dog if they were to see a story on CNN about a guy in blackface who's a Democrat in office. It'd be like, the dog would go crazy, right? You show him a circle, you show him a square. You show him a circle, you show him a square. All of his life, and then one day you show him a triangle, and the dog loses his mind. That's exactly what some of these CNN people who are brainwashed. They're being lied to day in and day out. They're being told a reality that simply isn't so. And listen, I'm going to try to break some of that with just letting you hear what other people used to say. Here's President Donald Trump. We now know that the Democrats in some of their ranks, they believe in infanticide. Here's what Donald Trump said. Here's what Hillary said. Flashback one more time. Chris Wallace, 2016, October 2016, the last presidential debate. Here's Chris Wallace and Hillary Clinton. And
support Roe v. Wade, which guarantees a constitutional right to a woman to make the most intimate, most difficult in many cases, decisions about her health care that one can imagine. And in this case, it's not only about Roe v. Wade. It is about what's happening right now in America. So many states are putting very stringent regulations on women that block them from exercising that choice, to the extent that they are defunding Planned Parenthood, which, of course, provides all kinds of cancer screenings and other benefits for women in our country. Donald has said he's in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood. He even supported shutting the government down to defund Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, they sell baby
I
body
will
parts.
Defend Planned Parenthood. I will defend
They sell baby
Roe
body
v.
parts.
Wade, and I will defend women's rights to make their own health care decisions.
Why are the
And we have come
why are the
too
body parts
far
more
to
valuable
have
than the
that
baby?
turn back now. And indeed, he said women should be punished, that there should be some form of punishment for women who obtain abortions. And I could just not be more opposed to that kind of thinking.
I'm going to give you a chance to respond, but I want to ask you, Secretary Clinton, I want to explore how far you believe the right to abortion goes. You have been quoted as saying that the fetus has no constitutional rights. You also voted against a ban on late-term partial birth abortions. Why?
Because Roe v. Wade very clearly sets out that there can be regulations on abortion so long as the life and the health of the mother are taken into account. And when I voted as a senator, I did not think that that was the case. The kinds of cases that fall at the end of pregnancy are often the most heartbreaking, painful decisions for families to make. I have met with women who, toward the end of their pregnancy, get the worst news one could get, that their health is in jeopardy if they continue to carry to term, or that something terrible has happened or just been discovered about the pregnancy. I do not think the United States government should be stepping in and making those most personal of decisions. So you can regulate if you are doing so with the life and the health of the mother taken into account.
Mr. Trump, your reaction, and particularly on this issue of late-term partial birth
Well,
abortion.
I think it's terrible. If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me. Because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where she's been, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month on the final day. And that's not acceptable.
Well, that is not what happens in these cases. And using that kind of scare rhetoric is just terribly unfortunate. You should meet with some of the women that I've met with, women I've known over the course of my life. This is one of the worst possible choices that any woman and her family has to make. And I do not believe the government should be making it. You know, I've had the great honor of traveling across the world on behalf of our country. I've been to countries where governments either forced women to have abortions like they used to do in China, or forced women to bear children like they used to do in Romania. And I can tell you the government has no business in the decisions that women make with their families in accordance with their faith, with medical advice, and I will stand up for that right.
All right. But just briefly, I want to move on to another
honestly,
segment.
Nobody has business doing what I just said, doing that as late as 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days prior to birth. Nobody has that.
All right. Let's move on to the subject of immigration.
This video went viral. We played it for you on Thursday. And then Fox News says this Trump's late-term abortion warning in 2016 debate against Clinton goes viral. And that's exactly what happened. Everybody's been watching this thing. And about that time, you know, we find the video of Northam. And the photo of Northam in blackface. Now everybody's talking about Northam in blackface. They're not talking about his infanticide comments. I can't stress that to you enough. Okay, like they took it a step further than what Donald Trump was saying. They're now saying baby can be born, and then you can decide whether or not you want to keep it. Now that used to be, well, you can decide to adopt it or not. No. You can now decide if you want to kill the child. Again, the Democrat Party, the party of slavery, the party that won't recognize the modern-day slavery going on with the sex trafficking at the southern border, the party that also still believes, just like Dred Scott said, you're not a citizen if you've got black skin. You're also not a citizen if the mother now decides that you're not a citizen. And I would use that term loosely, the term mother. We got to take a break.
Of your home with cartilage.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Out of your home with cartilage, and that's what we need. And that retreating complete safety is really a Monday morning quarterbacking decision by prosecutors. And what this bill would do would remove that possibility of a rogue prosecutor that hates guns to be able to charge someone that used force justifiably. The citizens are confused about what the laws are. They don't really understand what they are. And this law simplifies, hey, deadly threats presented, I have a right to defend myself. I don't have to worry about where I'm at for having a different standard. This is a good deal. We need to get behind this.
You think Moms Demand Action is going to mobilize? You're going to have to deal with their protests and things like that. They're going to show up and speak against this bill.
Paul, I want to put this into perspective. Moms Demand Action has about 1,000 people in Arkansas. Patriots has 17,000. So that vocal minority might mob the Capitol for Moms Demand Action, but that's
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Last week, the governor announced his tax reform plan, specifically one piece, the income tax reduction. It is a standalone bill that just cuts income taxes to 5.9% over a period of years. Will this bill run this week? Will it run today in the Revenue and Tax Committee? We will wait and see. We'll be reporting on it. You want to stay tuned to conduitnews.com as well as our other platforms for this. We're going to be back here tomorrow reporting on the events of today. And you can go to conduitnews.com and get the latest on all of this stuff. On Friday, we told you how the Arkansas Supreme Court struck down Fayetteville's discrimination law. You can watch that video right there. Also, there was a resolution denouncing a Muslim extremist group, and it failed in the Arkansas House after a roll call vote was taken. Also, Senator Kim Hammer was on the show last week talking about college freedom of speech on college campuses. Senator Hammer was here. And so you can get all of that as well as more. Stay tuned. And we'll continue with our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. Arkansas, have a great week. Have a great Monday. Be safe.